Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the College Board Understanding Your SAT Results. We're just going to wait a couple of seconds to make sure that everybody's in and ready to go. So we'll start in just another minute. Okay. Thank you again for coming to the College Board SAT Results webinar. Just some logistics in the beginning here that we want to make sure you are aware of. First and foremost, we want to thank the Department of Education and the partnership that we have with them. We're able to bring you all of these data coaching webinars at no cost. So we want to thank them for their continued dedication to the educators in New Hampshire. Also, everyone is muted, so we cannot hear you. If you could use the Q&A or chat section, we are going to be feeding questions to each other as we go through the information from this webinar. Also, tomorrow, about 24 hours after this webinar has been completed, you'll get an email and it will have a link to the PD certificate for this. It will give you a link to where the video of the webinar will be once it's uploaded. And then there's also the Google Slides that you'll have access to. All of the resources are attached inside the slides. So we have links on the appropriate pages to all the PDFs and anything that you might need. So all you're going to need are the Google Slides for that. And then at the end of this, there'll be a brief survey. It's been a little bit since we've done one of the College Board and SAT webinars. So we'd love your feedback and anything you have to be able to give us for anything that you would like to have added or what you liked about the webinar would be super helpful. This webinar is actually slated to go until 4:45. We slated an hour and a half for this. I don't believe, Marissa and I were going over things with Kristen. I don't believe it will go that far, but we in the past have been really stretched for time. So we just wanted to make sure we had enough time to answer questions. Don't be surprised if we get out a little bit early, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that it is scheduled to 4:45. I'm Heather Jenkins. I am joined today by Marissa Hooper, who she and I work on the data coaching contract with Kristen Crawford, who's from the department. So I'll just have them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here with you today. My name is Marissa.
And hello, I'm Kristen Crawford. I realize thanks to Marissa, I need to update this little biography here because it says I joined NHED last September, but it'll actually be 3 years this coming September. So I'm happy to be here as well and to hear any questions and concerns you have about SAT.
Okay, so for our goals for today, we want to make sure you understand the content of the SAT. We want to make sure that you know how to navigate the SAT assessment reports and College Board. And there's some newer tools on the College Board site. Marissa and I are finding that things are changing sort of somewhat intermittently. So we're going to give you the latest and greatest of where everything is and the best places to go to get this information. Okay. So when it comes to SAT, one thing that I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of and that we're consistently trying to make sure that sites understand is the SAT is your only accountability measure pretty much for an assessment for high schools. So this is your state assessment. A lot of people have relatively low rates of students taking the assessment. And you just want to make sure you understand that it's the same guidelines, that you need 95% of your students taking the assessment to be able to ensure that you're getting sort of the best scores as possible for that academic achievement for your indicator for high school. You're also looking at graduation rate, your English language proficiency, and your college and career readiness. So all of these factors go into your state funding and what your status is within the state. And a big part of that is this SAT that all students in high school are required to take, not just the ones going to college. We've been working with College Board, and I think people are continuing to give feedback that it's called College Board, so it's a little bit of a misunderstanding. So just know that it's for any high school student for their accountability. When it comes to accountability, just so that you can kind of understand where the scores fall for ELA and for math, with any accountability measure, whether it be New Hampshire SAS or whether it be SAT, we're looking at 4 levels of proficiency. For both ELA and math, we're looking for level 3 or 4 scores. Those are the students that are sort of quote unquote proficient, and they're meeting those college and career readiness skills that are needed. And so each particular student will fall into one of these 4, I guess, sort of buckets for where their ELA and math scores are, where their scores are falling within the SAT. So I just wanted to make sure this is something that when we talk to people, they don't necessarily realize where the cutoffs are. So we just wanted to make sure to have this in here today. This is our agenda that we're going to go through. I'm going to go through the breakdown of the structure of the SAT and just some general information about it. And then Marissa is going to go through the SAT assessment reports, and I'll go through the tools. Then we're going to be looking at SAT data for instructional change. So we have a couple of scenarios there, and then wrap up with any questions. So just in general, when we're looking at the scale of scores, we thought it would be interesting for you all to see where the SAT, we know pretty much it goes from 400 to 1600 if you got the actual, the perfect score, but it also kind of shows you where the PSAT 10 and PSAT and MSQT are, and also the PSAT 8, 9. Right now, obviously, the only assessment that is required is the SAT, but I know a lot of you also give the PSAT and MSQT or others. So when we're looking at the specific sections, so for each section, again, we're looking at the SAT. For a section score, you can score between 200 and 800, and then it just shows you here where the PSAT and MSQT and the 10 fall, and what the score range is for the PSAT 8, 9. For math and reading, this is all information that we have on the College Board, that's on the College Board site that we've kind of put in here. So just the time allotted so that you can see here for reading and writing. There's 2 32-minute modules and there's 54 questions. For math, 2 35-minute modules for a total of 44 questions. So a total of about 134 minutes and 98 questions. So this assessment is now, as of the digital assessment, which started last year, there's an adaptability to it. So every student gets module 1 and they get roughly 20 to 25 questions. And so what happens after that is, depending on how they're doing on those questions, if they're doing really well on the questions, they're going to go to the second module that is the harder module for those questions. If they are having a hard time with the first portion in module 1, they will then go down to an easier set of questions for the second part. What I want to make sure, a lot of people ask, well, if they didn't do very well in module 1 and they get module 2, the easier, and they start doing really well, will they pop up to the harder module? The answer is no, but this next slide will show you what can happen with the adaptability and how the scores can break down. So if you're looking at on the left-hand side there, let's just look at math. You have the information that you had for module 1. And if you had the easier module, you can see that's the light blue. And so you can see that the scores for the harder module and the easier module overlap quite a bit. So you can still continue to get a better score if you're on the easier module. Obviously, if you haven't been doing well on module 1, you're never going to be able to get a perfect score because you are not doing well on the first 20 to 25 questions, which means there's a little bit more of a cap on how high of a score that you can get if you are get that easier module 2 section compared to the harder. I'm just going to pause there and just make sure there's no questions about that.
And I was just going to add in, Heather, that down here we've linked at the bottom the benchmarks for the other assessments, the PSAT 10, PSAT NMSQT, and then the PSAT 8-9. So that link is right there for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marissa. Okay. All right. So for the performance score bands, we thought this was pretty interesting too. So you can see that there are specific performance bands, up to 7 of them. And you can see, depending on a student score, what percentile they are in for either the PSAT 8-9, again, PSAT, NMSQT, or 10, and then the SAT. So you can see the different percentiles there. They sort of overlap a little bit depending on the assessment that you're looking at. But you can see right on line 4, you've got the 25th percentile for SAT, line 5, like that. Performance band 5 is a 50th percentile, 6, 75th, and 7th is 90th. Just to show you a little bit of the structure of math, we wanted to show you what you used to see and now what you're seeing with the newer digital assessment. So prior to the 23-24 school year, so basically up until spring of 2023, the math breakdown, you can see on the left-hand side, you had your section score, your test score, both math, and then your sub-scores for those were Heart of Algebra, problem solving and data analysis, and Passport to Advanced Math. Now with the digital SAT, so from here on out, you have your section score, which is just like your test score for math. And then you have 4 different sub-scores: algebra, advanced math, problem solving and data analysis, and then geometry and trigonometry. It is not necessarily apples to apples on where it's, like the heart of algebra is not necessarily going all into algebra. There's some of that might be going into advanced math. Again, the problem solving and data analysis are probably pretty similar, but because the reporting categories have changed, it's probably best to look at them kind of in a whole new way with the new reporting categories rather than trying to cross-reference historically. For the math breakdown for each section, so you can see we've got algebra. We just wanted to add the information in here about what the description of that domain is, so what you're going to see within there, and then some of the testing points for that. And then the question distribution. So it's about 35% of the assessment, or 13 to 15 questions for algebra. Whenever we're talking with people or are on site, this is, we recommend that people take a look at this and have your staff be a little bit more well-versed in exactly what is being assessed on the SAT, just to give a little bit of perspective, and so that people know that and make sure that they're covering these particular skills before the 11th grade assessment specifically. So these are the other, those are the other breakdown. Again, you'll have the slides here. I'm not going to go through each one of them specifically, but we just wanted you to have the general information here. For reading and writing, we also put the breakdown here. Again, ending in the spring 2023, you can see on the left-hand side what your particular section scores were and the test scores, and then all the sub-scores for that. And now with the digital and beyond, you'll see that you've got your reading and writing section score, and then your sub-scores are information and ideas, craft and structure, expression of ideas, and standards of English conventions. So again, we put in here exactly, this is what's being covered in each one of those particular sections, and how much of the assessment is dedicated to that particular section or domain, just so that you can, again, have a general idea of the types of content and types of questions that your students are going to be asked. For the essay, we have here, again, just it's one prompt. You've got a passage, it's 50 minutes, and they're going to analyze that passage and they're going to write a response to that. So these are the this is the information that the essay measures. It's on a 2 to 8 scale. I believe you can also, Marissa, is it later on that you can get a 0 on this one too? Is it 0 and 2 to 8, or is that something separate?
No, that's what is shown on the reports on College Board. So Kristen might be able to speak more to it, but you will see a 0 or 2 to 8
Yes.
option
Okay.
on the reports.
Perfect. Thank you. So the ways that this is scored is on the making sure they understood the passage, the analysis of the information, and then the writing being organized and precise and appropriate. There is a link here for the scoring guide. It's really long. This is showing you a score of 4 and what the student would need to be doing to score a 4. I will tell you, this is another one of those resources that we really want to get into the hands of your educators, just so that they can understand how these students are being scored on an essay, and sort of what is sort of deemed for SAT as best practice for having students complete this type of work. So the whole scoring guide is also going to be linked there. So accommodations and universal tools. Just wanted to, this webinar isn't really to talk about the different accommodations and universal tools, but we wanted to have it in here just so that you could refer to it. The universal tools that are available are what you see on your screen here. We did link information about accommodations and approved accommodation details. So if you have anybody or need anything that pertains to that, we've linked those resources here as well. There are a few different places that you can practice and prepare for the SAT. Again, we thought it would be helpful. Most of you probably know this. There are paper practice tests. They have now, the Blue Book has the digital testing that students can do, and then Khan Academy linked up with College Board, and they have those SAT prep courses as well. Let's pause there. Marissa, I'll pass it off to you, but I'll let you know if anything comes in the chat or questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Right now, we're going to take you through some of the SAT assessment reports that the SAT Suite offers. And so what we're going to be reviewing today, we're going to be looking at the Performance by All Students report, Knowledge and Skills, Growth, and Student Roster. Later on in the slide deck and the presentation, we'll be able to share, what report is best depending on the kind of answer you're looking for, what questions you have. And so we're going to then take these assessments and be able to figure out how it's going to help us with students, with our classes, our curriculum. So first things first, we wanted to link the login page for the K-12 reporting portal. So you will log in, and what will happen is you'll choose the dashboard right here that will bring you to the assessments. And it will bring you to this page next, which you will choose the K-12 assessment reporting.
I just wanted to, not to interrupt, I just wanted to make sure that folks know as well that SAT is one of those things that we find that a lot of districts and schools are not necessarily giving their teachers access to the reports and all of that. Whenever we're on site, we try to get folks to be able to give their teachers access so that they can look at their students and to be able to really see how they did. This particular part needs a login, but there's other portions of this that we'll be going over as well that don't need a login. But you know, I know it's district by district, but as much information as you can get into your teacher's hands, the better. So just putting a plug in there to have your teachers have access to College Board.
Thanks, Heather. And that also reminds me that depending on the role that you have within College Board, the access, you may see something that might be a little different than what you might have access to. In general, it should be the same, but I just know depending on access as a teacher or an administrator, it might look just a little different. So the first report we're going to go through is the Performance by All Students report. And so that is the first report linked here under the standard reports. And when we do this, you are going to put in the test that you want. You're going to have all of the test options, but today we're talking about SAT. There's the different dates that the SAT is administered. So I'm working with the school day, spring 2025, and then the grade level. So depending when students are taking the SAT, you are able to include grade 12 in the report if you want, or just grade 11. So this is up to you of what you want to see in your data. So once we put in this information, we want to run this report. And this is what this report looks like. So this is the performance by all students. This is the mean score, which you can see right here. This is where we're going to be able to go back and forth between the different reports of the performance by all students. So we are looking at the mean score here, and we are given a total. That is for the number of testers that we're testing in, the different totals we have here. We're going to go through that in just a second. The score distribution, and then the mean total score, both the math and the reading and writing assessment. And we're given this information. We have our district scores, so we can see the number of testers, the score distribution, and the mean total score for our district. We have that information for the state. And we also have a second state. So the difference between the New Hampshire Department of Education is that that is just public schools in New Hampshire. The state for all schools includes students that are homeschooled and students that are in private school. So that is included in there. We then have US and US territories, and global testers as well. So the mean score, we're just able to see the average of both the math and the reading and writing assessment. We can also click into the score distribution. I've clicked in here into the district, and this will pop up. This will give us the number of testers within these specific ranges of scores. So here we can see that 125 of our testers scored between a 1,000 and 1,190. We can also, if you scroll down on that page, we're also able to see the reading and writing mean score. And we are also able to see the math mean score, again, for all of those, our district, state, US and US territories and global testers. And then we're also able to see the essay scores. So this is where, again, you can see the mean essay for the reading, the analysis, and the writing. if you scroll up on the page, but we have a slide deck here today, you're able to go over to the section benchmark performance. And so when you click that, it's going to bring you to the benchmark distribution. And so this will tell you whether students met both benchmarks, one benchmark, or neither benchmark. And so if we look here for our district, we can see that 53% met both, 35% met one, and 13% met neither of those. And if we dig into that a little more, we can see that to meet both benchmarks, that's that college and career readiness benchmark. So on the math, that's a score of 530, and on the ELA, that's a score of 480, and that's that scoring a 70 or a 75% chance of earning a C or higher in that credit-bearing college course. The met one benchmark, that means they either met the math or the reading and writing. And meeting neither means they did not meet the math or the reading and writing. And again, that's that score of 530 for math and 480 for ELA. We can also dig into the reading and writing and the math as well for the section benchmark report. This is where it changes a little bit, where we can either meet and exceed a benchmark, approach a benchmark, or not yet approach a benchmark. And what this means is if we meet or exceed, that means we are at or above grade level. If we are approaching, we are below grade level by 1 year or less. And if we are not yet approaching, that means we are below grade level by more than 1 year. So the reporting there differs just a little bit once you get into the section scores. If anyone has any questions regarding the report by all students or performance by all students report, please let us know. And if not, I'm going to jump into the knowledge and skills report. I have to say this is probably the most used report and the most helpful for classroom teachers and students to know exactly what skills they are either exceeding, meeting, approaching, and so forth. And so this it will be back at this reports page. So we're going to dig into the knowledge and skills report. And again, we'll have to put in the test, the administration date, and the grade level that we're looking to run the report for. And we will run that report. And this brings us to this landing page here, where we are automatically defaulting to the reading and writing. And so you can see that school is highlighted right here, it's yellow. And that's what all of this information is down here. If you are on the district or the state, it's going to be different colors. So this is the reading and writing report for this particular school. And this is going to give us some more information. This gives us reading and writing as a total section score. And on the left column here, we can see that performance score band. This is the 7 score bands that Heather was referring to earlier in that table talking about the percentiles. So we have the performance score bands. And then under reading and writing, we can see the number of testers that scored within a particular score band and also the percentage of students. So we can see that 46 testers scored in a 200 to 360 range, and that was 27% of students. To the right here, we're able to see all of the domains of reading and writing broken down. And again, we can see the number of testers and the percentage of students that landed in those score bands. Now, we are going to show you some more information about how this can be helpful. Just saying, 13% of students landed in the 370 to 410 range can be not helpful at first glance, but as we dig into more of the resources that College Board is able to offer us, it is going to give us some more information that's going to be helpful for our classroom and our students. And so what we also have here is the percentage of that section and the number of questions possibly that students can get in that particular domain of this section of the assessment. We can also click right in here into information and ideas, any of those, and we're going to be able to just get a little more information about what students were asked to do for this particular part of the assessment. We can then move over to the math in this section, and this is going to be similar. Again, we have that overall math score, and then we have our performance score bands listed here. We have the number of testers on the left that landed into the specific score bands, and then the percentage of students. Again, we're given the domains of math here, and we can click into them and we're given some more information about that particular domain. Again, we'll show you how these score bands can be helpful to us depending on where students land in these particular score bands. We also have the ability to compare groups, just like that first report where we were able to see the state, the global testers. We can add that in as well if we wish. So if we compare groups, we can add in the district, the state for public schools, state for all schools, US and US territories, and global testers. So if I chose the state and all schools, my report would look like this, where we can see that yellow, right, is our particular school, and then the state is the green. So we can see that 32% of our students fell within this particular score band. Overall, 8% of the state fell within this particular score band. So this can be helpful, in depending on the questions we're going to talk about later, what information you're trying to get from these reports. You can add any of these in. I'm giving the example on this report, but with any of these reports, you can export them into an Excel spreadsheet, which can be really helpful for a number of reasons. So I'm showing you here, but you have this option on any of them. And so you may or may not get this prompt depending, again, what sort of access you have. So we can print the current report in the school performance data, and that will download into an Excel spreadsheet. Again, we see the school and the state. We have those performance score bands and the testers, so we can use this to our advantage. We also have the ability, and this is going to come into place as well when we look at the school roster report, but we are always able to view students right up at the top here. So if we're in this report, we want to start looking at individual student data, we can press this view students, and that is going to give us all of our students. We obviously can't display any of that information here. So you would see that below here with all of the information. And we can search by a particular student name or ID here. Depending how many students you have, it might be a long list to scroll through, so you can get right to a particular student. You can also add and hide particular columns. And so that will help you, like if you don't care to know their date of birth, their district student ID displayed when you're analyzing this data, that can make it so there's less columns. You can see it on one screen, which can be helpful. I'm now going to go into the growth report. I haven't seen any questions yet, but again, please ask if you have any throughout these reports. The growth report is going to be under the scheduled reports. And so what you're going to be able to do is, again, you're going to click the cohort of students that you want to see growth for, and the whichever assessments you want to see. Again, these can be anything you're looking for. This is just an example that I put in. So I want to see the fall assessments for 10th grade, 11th grade fall, 11th grade spring, and 12th grade fall. And so what these growth reports will do is you'll schedule it and you're not going to get it automatically. It's been scheduled. You usually get it within 24 hours. So you get it sent straight to your email that it's available on the portal, and then you'll be able to log into that report. And that will be here. So you can see that I ran a few growth reports. And if you just click on this download option here, that will download the report for you. And this is just two snapshots of the report. The left here, I have the evidence-based reading and writing report. And again, depending on the students and the time of year, you can see that I was able to get the spring 2023 SAT and the fall 2023 SAT for this particular cohort of students. And then to the right, I have the math. These reports give you their growth measures. It tells you the number of test takers. It gives you their projected mean score as well, based on how they did on a previous assessment. So this gives you that information and you can keep digging in. I do apologize if it's a little blurry for you, but this gives you, again, more information about the mean score, the projected mean for the past test, and a projected mean for a future assessment as well. And this is the math growth report for, again, the spring 2023 SAT and the fall 2023 SAT. That was 11th graders moving to 12th grade. And lastly, we're going to talk about the student roster report. This, again, is just like that report I had showed where you can see the students at the top. So if you choose the individual students tab here, that is going to bring you to the student roster report. Again, we'll have to put in all of our information. And this is the information that it gives us. Specifically, we can see the SAT scores. This is for a row of 2 students. We can see their total score on the SAT, their reading and writing section score, and their math section score. And then we're also able to see those benchmarks, that they were able to meet the reading and writing section benchmark, and they also met the math section benchmark as well. That meets or exceeds, which again, in the previous slide, you can see the descriptors for those different performance levels.
Just a heads up on that one thing that Marissa and I realized, probably a little too late when we were on one of the sites, where she was showing you, you can have like take certain columns off or adds to certain columns on. That report scrolls really far to the right-hand side. There are a lot more columns than it shows you, and I believe there's no arrow or anything, Marissa, is that right? Where you just kind of have to figure out how to get over to the side or make your screen smaller. So just a heads up on this particular report, we were having a little bit of trouble reading all the way to the right at one point.
Yes, and the information you want to see is the last columns on the right. So having those filters is definitely helpful in all the scrolling. It's also helpful, again, to see it all on one page. And then again, we can export that assessment data. And so that will look like this down here. And I just deleted some of that information, but you can delete the columns as well. But it will give you all of this information also in a report for students. And lastly, we just wanted to touch base on the instructional planning report, which is here. This used to be something that was widely used. It's actually still available, but it's only available for dates for the 2022-2023 school year and earlier. If you want to look at, any sort of data historically, again, it's not apples to apples because it did change with the digital SAT. However, just know it's there for you if you are looking to go back and sort of see students from prior years. And we just wanted to add in here that, with all this data that you're able to access, doing any sort of data dive is critical in order for you to make decisions around students, around curriculum, around, which sort of classes are covering which standards. Doing that data dive is critical, so we want to add that in here for you, which we have a data-driven dialogue, which brings us through 5 phases, which I'll go through in just a second. But I did want to let you know that we did link here the data-driven dialogue protocol that we have, along with the data-driven dialogue template that I'll show you in just a minute. And so we use this protocol anytime we're looking at data to identify a goal, to identify action items, to make any sort of change. We want to use data to back up that change that we're going to make. So for this data-driven dialogue, we do have our first phase, and that's going through predicting the data. I'm not going to go through this super quick. We have that, or excuse me, I am going to go through this super quick. We have the protocol you can read. But this predicting the data, it's going to get out any sort of biases you might have before analyzing the data. So thinking about, what assumptions do you think you're going to see? What do you predict it will show? Maybe you think students are going to score well in a particular domain of math or ELA, whatever it might be, and maybe something you're hoping to learn. The phase 2 is that observing the data. And I just want to note quickly that we do have some time ranges or times that you can follow here. For instance, 3 minutes is writing individual observations, and then 7 minutes of this can be discussing as a group, total of 10 minutes for this phase. And what that does is anytime we talk about data, it's important that everyone's sort of coming in with a different lens and a different sort of experience and their ability to analyze data. So we need to make sure we're giving everyone the time and space to be able to make observations. And a lot of times those who might take a little longer, have a lot to add to the table. So we have those up there. But the observing the data, that's where we want to focus on what we're seeing. We're going to be looking for any patterns or trends or note anything surprising or unexpected. A big thing here is we're not getting into the because. We just want to know, what we're seeing, talk about what we're seeing, not why we're seeing it. We then get into a phase 2A where we refine our observations, and this is where we want to quantify them. And this is because if we're trying to create a goal, we need to make sure we can measure that goal and how we'll know when we get there. So this phase helps us do that. Phase 3 is where we interpret the data and make those inferences. So this is where we can generate those possible explanations, ask more questions. Maybe we need more data to figure out, if what we're seeing is more of a trend, less of a trend, revisit our grade level standards and whatnot. And then phase 4, that's where we start to consider implications for practice. This is where we're going to figure out what changes now do we need to make to help our students make growth in whichever particular area that we're seeing is, maybe students are struggling with. And also, where are we doing well? Like, where are we doing well? Why are we doing well in this area? And how can we continue that, in different domains, in different subjects, with different groups of students? So this is really what are those next steps we should take. And then phase 5 is where we reflect on that process. And this is that data dive short form. This is what was linked in the previous slide, where you can go through this protocol. And again, all of that information is there. If you are an administrator and you want to have staff go through this data dive with SAT data, or you're a math department and you want to do that as well, this is a great starting point for you. So I don't believe I saw any questions. So at this point then, I will pass it back off to Heather, who's going to take us through the College Board tools.
Perfect. Thank you. So unlike some of the information and the reports that you're seeing, the 2 sections of the College Board website that we're going to talk about here, you do not need an actual login to be able to access the information. First thing is the Skills Insight. So this portion of College Board allows you to look at students who are in particular score bands, what types of questions are getting on the SAT. It goes right really well with the knowledge and skills report. So you can see some of the exemplar test questions for a specific score band, and those knowledge and skill statements for what students are able to do in that particular score band. So to get there, you're going to go right to the College Board site. We have the link right here. You can also Google SAT Skills Insight, and it will bring you to the specific College Board site here. And then there's a lot of places to get lost. But you're going to go up to the 4K to 12 educators where the little box is there. And then you're going to choose Using Skills Insight. Once you're here, you're going to go down to where it says Explore Skills Insight. And then it's going to bring you to a dropdown where you're able to choose a specific area of the assessment. So you can see either reading or writing or math. You're able to choose a specific area that you would like to take a look at. And then you are able to choose a specific score band for that. So we've got information and ideas was chosen, and now we're going to choose a specific score band. So we chose 370 to 410, and then you're going to click go. What this does is it brings you up with, brings up a screen here that tells you the skills and what students are able to do and what knowledge they will have within this particular score band. So you can see those two bullets up at the top are telling you what those students can do. And then there are, depending on the particular band and the skill that you choose, there's a couple of example questions. And you can see sort of if a student is scoring in this band, this is the question that they are going to be able to answer correctly. So if we choose that, this is the example question 1. Again, it gives you the general information that the student would need to read, and then what the actual question is, and then the explanation and where students might be having trouble, why they might have answered put one of the incorrect answers on it. So that can be really helpful. In addition, there are different score bands within College Board. So you're able to see these. We've sourced it right there on the right. If you have ever looked at New Hampshire SAS and looked at what are called performance level descriptors, if you're familiar with that language, this is something that I look at and that we look at as something similar. So right now we have up here the performance score band is 3. This is what the scale rating is. It's 420 to 480. And then you can look at whatever information that you're looking at for those domains. You can see what students are doing in those domains. And then you can look at if they scored in the 420 to 480 band, and we want to move them up to the next band, which is 490 to 540, you can see what the requirements are in the skills and knowledge for those students that are in the 4th score band. So it really helps you figure out this is exactly where students are and where do I need to be able to get them to. Again, this is something we're looking at SAT. This is just a little statement about how to use these and how to improve student understanding. If you're somebody who does the PSAT or PSAT and SQT, these can also be helpful just for your teachers to understand where students' skills may be and how to be able to improve their understanding and not just their understanding, I guess, but their ability to transfer their skills from the classroom to this type of assessment. The next thing I want to talk about is the question bank. One of the biggest sort of complaints that we've heard from the change of the digital SAT is you used to be able to see for specific assessments, you used to be able to see the actual questions that students were asked. You're able to kind of print those out and talk it over with students and what have you. What they've done now is they've created just a sort of giant depository of a lot of the different questions that students may be asked on the assessment. You're able to filter these by domain, by skill, by difficulty. And again, this is all to help improve instruction and to give students a little bit of an understanding of what they might be seeing. So as we go into the educator question bank, we get right onto that College Board. We're again looking at that K to 12 educators, and now we're going to see the using skills insight.
Yes, this is just one of the ways to get there. There's
Okay.
actually a few ways to get to these different parts of the College Board website. This is just one way you can get there.
Thank you. You can see the access to skills insight tools in the middle there, but we're going to go to the access the question bank from there. And it says review sample questions. So here's where we're going to be able to find the questions. Again, a lot of different drop downs. You can choose whichever assessment you're looking at. Right now we're looking at SAT, so we're going to choose SAT. And then we're going to choose whether we want reading and writing or math. This time we're going to choose math. And then you have the different domains. So you can choose a specific domain and click search. And then what happens is there's a lot of information sort of on this page. So we want to go through it just a little bit. So you have the ability to use a few different drop downs. So as we're kind of going through this, we can see on the bottom here, as you click on the actual question number, it will bring up the question and then the correct answer and the rationale for that answer. So these would be, kind of good for questions of the day or to, work with a group of students and give them a little bit of understanding about what's on the assessment. If you want to go through and you want to narrow down, because there's so many questions, you can narrow down by difficulty. So you can look at the easy questions, you can look at the medium questions or the hard questions, and then you can look at specific skills. So these are all your subcategories within the domain. And then this exclude active questions. You can exclude the ones that are also on that full-length practice test, because if you have all your students doing the practice test, you don't want to have them get those questions before doing the practice test. And then look at this, new, we're able to see how it aligns specifically to our state standards. We use the Common Core standards. So if you chose New Hampshire, you would be able to see how they are aligned to those as well. So if we wanted to select any of these, we can choose our specific information and then we can search with that information. So right now we're looking at something that we have 22 questions. We're able to see we chose medium. We wanted linear equations with one variable, and we're looking at the New Hampshire state standards. So these are all of the questions that are of medium difficulty. And then you can choose any of those questions and view those questions. You can also use the checkbox here and export to a PDF. And so if you choose export, there's a couple of different options. You can do it without correct answers or explanations. You can do it with correct answers and explanations, or without answers or headers. So there's 3 different ways that you can do that. But right here, we have what the PDF looks like. It's, a few pages. We've got the general information here about the question. And then you've got the information about the specific answers. And so you can kind of go through these and you can print these out or use them as maybe a whole group lesson or what have you. sort of pause there. All right, Marissa, we have a couple scenarios here that she's going to go through and then we'll wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. We are going to continue with the using SAT data for instructional change. And one of the questions we ask is, what report, all the reports that we were given, what report will provide the best insight for specific educational inquiries that we may have as an administrator, as an educator, as a team. So we wanted to go through that performance by all students reports. This is something that maybe at the, administrative level, looking at the overall performance and trends, we can see, the performance of our students overall in our school or district, how they're doing. We can also see or ask ourselves, how many students are meeting or exceeding the college and career readiness benchmarks. How will they do given the 75% chance of earning a C or higher in those college courses. We can also look at some average section scores and looking at the percentage of students performing at the different score ranges. So just looking at overall, how are we doing as a school or district, we'd want to look at the performance by all students report. We can also look at that report and think about growth and progress monitoring. Maybe how does this year's report compare to previous years? Are students showing improvements based on the grade levels year after year, or maybe across specific cohorts? So really just answering those big questions of that overall, how are our students doing? We then have the knowledge and skills report. And for this report, we can look at our curriculum and our teaching practices in our classroom. So thinking about, what knowledge and skills are students struggling with and what skills are students performing well on. This can help us as educators as well to think about, what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, and how our students are doing. So we can think about if there's any gaps that students might be having. We're going to talk about maybe some questions to consider at the end, but thinking about, gaps, maybe what curriculum adjustments are needed to better align with students and student needs, and maybe what standards or college and career readiness benchmarks are not being met. So this is going to, looking at this report, this is going to help us think about some of these questions that we have. And so this can obviously help more than just that, but these are just some thoughts, really thinking about our teaching in the classroom, the curriculum, where standards are falling, and how many times students may be exposed and so forth. We have that growth report. This can help us look at academic growth over time. So are students making that expected academic progress? How much growth have students made from the PSAT 8-9 to the PSAT 10? Maybe there's specific students that made the most or least growth. And also looking at instructional and program effectiveness. So are instructional programs helping students grow, and any specific initiatives that we have or maybe changes we made in instruction lead to improved growth outcomes. And then we have that student roster report. And this is where we can look at the targeted instruction and intervention for specific students, depending on their scores, which benchmarks they met. So we can provide them with that support or intervention. Maybe they need more advanced coursework or enrichment, depending on where they scored. And then also thinking about groupings, if those make sense based on their score patterns. We can look at student performance and readiness and, how students are doing, also comparing to school, district, state, or national averages. and that equity, access, and support. So are there performance trends by specific demographic or performance groups? We want to make sure that, again, we're meeting the needs of all of our students. And so also following up with if any students need accommodations, counseling, or college readiness planning. So these different reports that we looked at today can answer different questions that we may have, depending on what answers we want to find. And lastly, we thought about how can we make or how can we use the SAT reports to make instructional changes? And so we just wanted to give a little scenario here. Again, this is going to address the questions I had just discussed, but if we're looking at this assessment for grade 11 students for the SAT school day, we did a data dive analysis, and we determined that the advanced math is where we want to focus some instructional changes. We found that geometry and trigonometry was definitely a place of struggle for students, but we wanted to focus more on advanced math since it's a bigger portion of the SAT. And so we're looking, and this is where it can be difficult sometimes, is that college and career readiness benchmark for math, that's at a 530. You can see that that's in the middle of this score band. So when 27% of students scored in that score band, we don't know how many were above a 530 or below a 530. And that can make it difficult, but we want to include those students just in our thoughts for what we want to consider working on. And so this is another example of what Heather had showed for the Using Skills Insight. We can see that for the score bands that we're seeing students score in, these are the skills and knowledge statements of what these students are showing us that they are able to do at this point. And so again, depending on that performance score band, this is what we're showing us. We want to always be making growth. And so we want to know how can we get them to the next score band? And that's where we can use that Using Skills Insight tool. And we can figure out what skills, again, that students are able to show. Also examples of questions that they're able to do. And we want to know, again, how can we push them further? We also want to consider these questions. Where does this skill or standard show up in our curriculum? You know, which classes does it come in? Or excuse me, is it taught in? And at what point in the year is a skill explicitly taught? And this is different for high schools depending on, you know, when specific classes might be offered during the year. So these are discussions to have when thinking about this. We can also think of a concept. Is it taught in isolation or is it integrated across multiple units or courses? If we see that students are really struggling in the advanced math area, you know, are these kinds of skills only taught in specific classes, or do we see them across, you know, multiple units or maybe even courses? And do all students have access to this standard through their course pathways? We know not all students, you know, take all the math classes offered to them throughout their high school careers. So if a student only goes up to Algebra 2, are some of the standards that are on the assessment taught in a course that is sort of 1 year ahead? And so do those students have access to those standards? Also thinking about, have we taught this standard in the past? Maybe something needs to change, the methods, the pacing, the practice, depending. What instructional strategies that are building both understanding and that transfer. I think a lot of times, you know, when we think of assessments, what we're really wanting students to be able to do is be able to take what they're learning in our class and transfer it to new and novel situations. And that is the SAT. So we want to make sure that it's not just taught. They can not only just do it in my specific class, they can take that and apply it anywhere. And we want to make sure that we provide enough opportunities for students to work with these style questions as well. So it's not all new to them when they go and take the SAT that day. And so these are just questions to think about when you're looking at how students are doing, you're looking at the skills that need to improve and so forth. And we also had an example, you know, for ELA as well. thinking that we wanted to look at expression of ideas to make some instructional changes. ELA is a little easier. The college and career readiness benchmark is a 480. So that is included in this performance score band. So we know that it's these 3 score bands here where students are not able to meet that college and career readiness benchmark. So again, we are going to look at those skill and knowledge statements for performance score bands 1, 2, and 3 for expression of ideas. Again, how do we move them to the next score band? If you look at the data, we see that 19% or 56 of our students are scoring in this first performance score band. So we know we have a lot of students that are showing that they only have the foundational skills to be college ready. So we know that, as Heather was saying with those performance level descriptors, we want to be able to have them make growth. How can we have them move to the next score band, a score band 2? And then once they're there, how can we have them get to a score band 3 and so forth? And so we can also use, again, that educator question bank to find questions. And we can see here again that we have 2 difficulty level questions. You know, if we're working with students who have scored in the lower performance bands, then we want to make sure that they're able to access questions and then again make that growth as they continue. Same questions to consider: where are these skills appearing in our ELA curriculum? When are these skills taught, again, in isolation or maybe integrated across reading, writing, speaking, and listening tasks? It can get difficult. We've worked with schools before analyzing their SAT data, and they have so many of these electives for ELA, like a poetry class and all that, and you know, struggling to hit these standards in these elective classes that they want and their students love to take to make sure that they're prepared for the SAT. So it's always important that we're having these conversations to make sure that we are covering these standards for students. And again, how have we previously approached instruction for these particular standards? What strategies we might have, and making sure that we are providing the opportunities for students to be successful on the SAT. So I think I saw some movement in the chat.
Yeah, there is. I'm going to answer a couple of them out loud, and then Kristen might be able to answer one of them that I can't necessarily answer. So Erica, I am trying to run a growth report right now that's including like the SAT grade 11, PSAT grade 10, and then the PSAT 8, 9. I don't know exactly what it looks like. It's going to take a little bit of time to run it. So you know how to get in touch with me. I'll let you know if that report works for growth. Most of the time when Marissa and I go on site, we will give the information on like what a student's in 1 year got on the 8, 9, and then we'll show the cohort and what they got on the next one. And we actually format the data so that they can see the movement of the last 3 years. So we would take basically this year's 11th graders and where they were last year for the grade 10, where they were the year before for the grade 9. But there's a couple of options there so that you can start to see sort of growth and movement between the PSATs and SAT. Andrea, I do not know specifically where a document like what you have is located. I do know that iPlatform has a lot of the information about how students have scored over time on the SAT, and you know, historically you can look from year to year, but nothing that looks exactly like that particular spreadsheet. Kristen, I don't know if there's something on your website that has the link to.
Yeah, I've seen updated versions of that, but sometimes I get sort of, you know, internal documents. So I want to make sure anything that I have is shareable. And it was actually in a hard copy, so I don't actually have a link that I can share. But I just, while we were chatting, sent an email to our program managers and to Dina Johnson, who many of you know, to see if, if there's a link and if I could get that posted on our website. So if I can track that down, I will let Marissa and Heather know, and they can include that, excuse me, in the post-meeting materials.
Absolutely. And so Catherine, you asked if you could get a copy of this presentation. Yes, in the beginning, we just talked about, and within 24 hours, you'll get an email that's got a whole slide deck. And then if Kristen does get the link, we'll add the link for the information that Andrea asked about as well. And then a couple other questions about Erica asked, I know that there's a family portal for New Hampshire SAS. Looks like you're getting a lot of, great information for families, out to families for New Hampshire SAS. I do know as a parent of a child who took the PSATs and SATs, parents are somehow able to get into here, but it's not necessarily to look at the reports. So Kristen, I don't know if you have any information about parent access to College Board.
That is a really good question. We don't have the same kind of family portal agreement with the College Board that we created with Cambium. Given sort of the nature of and the ages of the kids taking it, that the students all have accounts. That's a really good point. I know we have parent reports available, but I don't know if there's a way to sort of merge it into a single sign-on. So we actually have a College Board state user group meeting next week. So I can add that to the list of topics to ask if there is, if we have the possibility of creating or adding that in. They might already have something that I'm just not aware of, but I can definitely bring it up next week. The meeting's Tuesday, Wednesday next week. So I probably wouldn't get an answer on that till sometime after that.
All right. And then Erica, you have your hand up. Do you still have something that you wanted to ask, or were you able to get that in the chat? Okay, so you took your hand down. So if you still have a question, definitely put your hand back up. But and I can try to allow you to talk. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Erica. All right. Any other questions? I'll have Marissa sort of wrap it up here, and then we'll answer anything else that we can as we go through.
Awesome. And as Heather stated in the beginning, this is the first time we've done a SAT webinar in a few years. So we wanted to make sure that we got some information out to you that would be helpful. And so if there's anything that you think we missed, or if there's anything that you think was helpful to you in understanding your SAT data, please let us know. It's a short survey that's going to pop up as soon as you close out of this webinar. So we're always looking for that feedback to provide more support around the SAT. We know that there's a lot of support in New Hampshire around the New Hampshire SAS. And so we want to make sure that high schools are getting that support as well in the SAT. And then speaking of, we do have, if you are high school here, which I know everybody is, that grade 11 science New Hampshire SAS assessment that your students took, we are doing a workshop and webinar next week to support analyzing those results within the Data Studio platform. So those will be on our website that you can sign up for those. And then if you have any questions at all, Heather, myself, and Kristen, our emails are here. You can let us know if we can help you in any other way to meet any needs that you have or any questions that you have. And as we promised, we were going to get out early today. So please have a wonderful rest of your day. Erica, I see that if you have a template for the PSAT, SAT growth data, you'd love to get that. We do have one. So
Yeah. I was just responding to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of transposing that we had to do. But I will see what I can do about getting it to you.
And thank you so much for coming to our webinar. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. School year, if we don't see you, you are almost there. And thank you so much for coming.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.